Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to our seminar today about unpacking PPP forgiveness. Thank you for joining us. Please post your questions in the Q&A only. The moderator will not be able to take questions in the chat and the Q&A. A recording of this webinar and slides will be posted shortly on our community site at realtime.inc.com. And later in the day, we will also be mailing a copy to participants. Briefly about myself, I am the founder and CEO of MultiFunding. We've been working with business owners for over a decade to help them find the best loan solutions to help them grow and expand their business. I'm an in-columnist writing regularly on business lending issues. I've advised prior administrations about the business credit markets as well as the Federal Reserve. I have a book out called The Growth Dilemma. And for my entrepreneur organization of friends out there, I'm a proud member of EO Philadelphia. My lawyers asked me to read a few disclaimers. We are in an unprecedented time in history, and the information available to us is changing rapidly. Please refer to our most current presentation for education. The information provided is based upon our best judgment about what we know at this time. However, key questions remain about how to implement PPP forgiveness. MultiFunding LLC does not accept any liability as it relates to the timeliness of content of the information we are sharing today or may share in the future, and we are under no legal duty to update any such information or recommendations. We encourage you to check in with your attorneys, CPAs, and financial advisors for additional insights. Progress is being made at how this PPP forgiveness is all going to be sorted out. That's great news, and we'll share a lot with that to you today, but guidance is still needed. Last week, the Treasury Department and the SBA came up with 2 forms to apply for PPP forgiveness. One is the easy form, and the other is the expanded form. How do you choose which one is for you? On Friday, we talked about the easy path in great detail, and today's seminar, we're going to talk about the expanded path. Some of it is tied. There are a few critical definitions you need to be aware of. One of the choices you have to make is whether you're going to use a 24-week or 8-week period for your forgiveness. The 24-week is 168 days after your loan disbursement day, or if you received your PPP loan before June 5th, 2020, you can also choose a 56-day period. There's also an alternative payroll covered period. You can select to either start your clock from the day that you got your money, or you can choose to start it from a few days after you got your money, when your next payroll started. And while it's not 100% true that in all cases 24 weeks is better. Some cases 8 weeks, if you've used all or most of your forgivable money in 8 weeks, it's probably worth it just to get it done, because if you continue on to the 24 weeks, you will have to maintain your FTE level and avoid a reduction in salary and wages. So how do you determine if you are eligible to use the easy application? If you're a self-employed individual, independent contractor, or sole proprietor, you can absolutely use the easy application. That means you had no employees at the time of the PPP loan application, and you did not include any employees' salaries in the computation of average monthly payroll in your application form. So if you meet these criteria, you're good to go with the easy application. Another set of criteria is that you did not reduce any annual salary by more than 25% of people earning under $100,000 in the time that your covered period compared to January 1st and March 31st, 2020. So you did not reduce the people's hours, hourly wages, and you did not reduce the number of employees. So essentially you did what you committed to do when you took the money, which was keep everyone on. If you did this, you can use the easy application, and there are some exemptions. So if you had a reduction because someone would not come to work, and you tried to find a replacement and you couldn't, that is an exemption. And if you tried to, you had an employee, you tried to increase their hours and they wouldn't take the increase, that is an exemption also. So you brought everyone back or tried to bring everyone back and you didn't decrease anyone's salaries by more than 25%, you're good to go with the easy. The third criteria is you also did not reduce any salary or hours compared by more than 25% compared to the period by January 1st and March 31st. But say you ran a restaurant, a hotel, a salon, etc., and you were unable to operate due to requirements by law, then you're also exempt and you can use the easy. So clearly, the two big decisions you have to make are 8 or 24, or easy or expanded. If you are able to do the easy, it's going to be a lot easier for you, no pun intended, and save you a lot of aggravation. So these are the criteria that you must decide at first. We did give an R on the easy process last Friday, and you can find that there. And while a lot of the information is similar, I just want to let you know that that is available to you. And if you really think you are qualified for the easy, you can almost just disconnect here and go into that. Then the question is for the easy, the expanded process, which for people that do not meet the criteria. Some questions are what can be included in forgiveness? Cash compensation, the sum of gross salary, gross wages, gross tips, etc., an allowance for dismissal or separation for people that you paid or incurred during the covered period or alternative covered period. Remember that for each individual employee, the total amount of cash compensation eligible for forgiveness may not exceed an annual salary of $100,000 as prorated for the covered period. So for an 8-week covered period, the maximum is $15,385 for an individual. And for a 24 covered period, that total is $46,154 for an individual. You can only include the compensation of employees who were employed by the borrower at any point during the covered period and whose principal place of residence is the United States. If you have foreign employees or employees who do not live in the United States, you cannot include them. Payroll costs are considered paid on the day that paychecks are distributed or the borrower originates an ACH credit transaction. Payroll costs are considered incurred on the day that the employee's pay is earned. Payroll costs are incurred but not paid during the borrower's last pay period or the covered period are eligible for forgiveness if paid on or before the next regular pay date. Otherwise, payroll costs must be paid during the covered period. You can count payroll costs that were both paid and incurred only once. You cannot double dip. And you can include only, to repeat, you can include only payroll costs for employees whose principal place of residence is the United States. Employer contributions for employee health insurance, including employer contributions to a self-insured employer-sponsored group health plan, but excluding any pre-tax or after-tax contributions by employees. So you can count what you included, but not what the employee included. You do not add employer health insurance contributions made on behalf of a self-employed individual, general partners, or owner employees of an S corporation, because such payments are already included in their compensation. So you cannot include your healthcare insurance as an example. Employer contributions to employee retirement plans, excluding any pre-tax or after-tax contributions by employees, are included. Do not add employer retirement contributions made on behalf of a self-employed individual or general partners, because such payments are already included in their compensation. Employer state and local taxes paid by the borrower are assessed on employee compensation, excluding any taxes withheld from employee earnings. Now, this is important. What owner compensation can be included? Enter any amount paid to owners. For a 24-week period, the amount is capped at $20,833, or the 2.5 amount equivalent of $100,000 per year for each individual, or the 2.5 month equivalent of the applicable compensation in 2019, which is lower. So for any self-employed individual, the maximum, even if you're on a 24-week period, the maximum you can include, or owner or general partner, the maximum you can include for them is $2,833. For an 8-week covered period, the amount is capped at 15,385. And if they earn less than 100,000, you have to allocate it to a lower amount. Other allowable expenses include your business mortgage interest payments incurred during the covered period, business rent or lease payments, and certain utility payments, including distribution of electricity, gas, water, telephone, transportation, or internet access. All eligible non-payroll costs must be paid during the covered period or incurred during the covered period and or paid before the next regular billing date. And that non-payroll costs cannot exceed 40% of the total forgiveness amount. And you can count these costs only once. You cannot double dip between paid and incurred. There are certain safe harbor deadlines that have now moved from 6/30th to 12/31. This is your inability to rehire employees who were employed on February 15th and inability to hire similarly qualified employers. It is no longer enough just to try and rehire an old employee. You need to try and replace them. Exemptions are made when you cannot find qualified employees for open positions and when you cannot restore your operations due to social distancing, sanitation, or customer service needs, as I previously explained. To be 100% forgiven, you must spend 100% of your loan proceeds on payroll expenses and eligible proceeds during the eligible period. Your FTE and certain salaries and wages on December 1st, 31st must equal those on February 15th. 60% of your forgiveness application can now be used for payroll, and the other 40% can be used for other things, but you can certainly do more than 60% for payroll. And if you spend less than 60% on payroll, none of the loan is eligible for forgiveness. The employer's share of payroll taxes, employers can now, participants in PPP can now defer 50% of your employer payroll expenses until 2021 and the other half until 2022. EIDL advances, if you received an advance, this amount we believe will be reduced from your forgiveness amount on the expanded application, although this is not 100% clear in the new information that was shared. Remember that irrespective of whether the money is forgiven, you only agree to use the loan for eligible payroll costs, rent, interest, or other mortgage utilities, and it is imperative that you keep methodical records of your expenses. What can reduce your forgiveness? If your average FTE count during the forgiven period is reduced from the comparable period comparable prior year period that you selected in your PPP application, your forgiveness could be reduced. If you reduced your pay of your employees by more than 25%, it could be reduced. And in each of these instances, you must work through complex calculations to determine how your forgiveness will be impacted. If you're going to do the expanded process, we strongly encourage you to work with your CPA or your advisor to help. It is fairly complex and you will likely need help. There are some exemptions for reductions of FTE. If you made a good faith written offer to rehire an employee during the covered period that was rejected by the employee, you can have an exemption. Any employee who is fired for cause, voluntarily resigned, or voluntarily requested and received a reduction of the hours is an exemption. If the average number of FTE employees during the covered period or the alternative covered period is less than during the reference period, the total eligible expenses available for forgiveness is reduced proportionally by your reduction of FTE. So you had 10 FTE and now you're down to 8, you will only get 80% of the forgiven amount. Full-time, how to calculate FTE? Full-time equivalent employees means an employee who worked 40 hours or more on average each week. Hours of employees who work less than 40 hours are calculated as proportions of a single full-time equivalent employee and aggregated. There are exemptions. Again, if you made a good faith effort to rehire them and you could not find another employee, and you do have a responsibility to inform the unemployment office of your attempt. The borrower that restores FTE employee levels by no later than June 30th, and actually that is a mistake, should now be December 30th, 2020, to its FTE levels in the borrower's pay period that included February 15th, 2020. And that, my friends, we do have follow-up resources available to you should you need help. And now I'm going to ask the moderator to open up the questions, and we have time for questions until 12:30 Eastern time. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Ami. Can you clarify what transportation expenses would be forgivable, such as gas, vehicle maintenance, registration, etc.?
Really there's not more clarification than that in the guidance, so that will be up to your bank, what they will be willing to accept.
Is there any further information on the possibility of an automatic loan forgiveness for PPP loans under 150K?
We've not heard anything about that other than rumor.
We heard that the PPP can be used in conjunction with the IRS ERC, the Employee Retention Credit. Is that true? And how do they work together?
I'm sorry, I really don't know, and that's something you'll have to ask your advisor.
What are the safe harbor exemptions, and how can you apply them to seasonal workers, FTEs?
Safe harbor exemptions are for people that you couldn't come back or try to bring back and couldn't come back. There are certain clauses related to seasonal employees that I'm not 100% clear of the rules on. So I would recommend that that is something you check in with your CPA or advisor about.
Another safe harbor question. What is the date on which FTEs need to reach February 15th levels for safe harbor for 24 weeks for a given period? Is it the date of forgiveness or the 31st?
Now it is December 31st. That is if you need the safe harbor requirement. If you don't need it, you can just go ahead and apply for your PPP. But if you want to benefit from it, then you need to wait.
We have received the PPP on April 27th, processed, reduced more than 25% April payroll on April 29th. After the May and June month payrolls were not reduced. Can we use the easy form?
I think it depends on how your payroll numbers look in aggregate during the time period. So if an aggregate during the time period, you're not less than 25%, you should in theory be able to use the easy form.
And if we already used up the funds after the 8 weeks, but before the 24 weeks, can we apply for the forgiveness, or we need to wait out the 24 weeks?
No, if you've used up all the funds and you're going to be close 100% forgivable or close to it, you might as well apply and get it done with.
Is the reduction in hourly wages based on the rate per hour or the total wages per individual?
It's a combination of both.
What if we are acquired by another company during the forgiveness period? Does our PPP loan and forgiveness migrate to the acquirer?
A good question in a scenario. It's a good question and scenario, but we don't know how to answer that. And it's something we're waiting for guidance on. In some instances, we've recommended that the money goes in escrow because we don't know how to handle it.
Do I qualify for the easy application if we replaced a person with another, but there was a 1 week gap in between?
I think that would be fine.
If employee is on 8 weeks maternity leave but returning, do I have to hire someone during the leave to keep my FTE headcount?
I think you need to check with your CPA on that. That might differ state by state, and I don't know what the rules are or how people are treated while they're on maternity leave. I'm sorry.
Can an S Corp use the easy form with any of the exemptions?
I don't think there's any reason why an S Corp can't use it. Any entity, as long as they meet the requirements, should be able to use the easy form without any problem.
How do I record employees who voluntarily resigned? I understand that I can use their salary because they worked for some part of the 24 weeks, but how do I mitigate the fact that my FTE count will drop?
I think the only way you can mitigate it is if you made all reasonable efforts to try and replace them with somebody else. And then it's mitigatable. If you didn't make reasonable efforts or you decided not to try to replace them, then that will affect your forgiveness amount.
We retained all employees less our receptionist since we were required to work from home. However, we had to furlough the receptionist. Do we still meet criteria too?
Technically, I don't think that you do.
The instructions say not reduced by 25%, but the application themselves, both easy and full, say no reduction, no mention of the 25%. Can you clarify?
I wish I could. Welcome to my world of confusion and yours. I apologize.
Can the internet reimbursed to employees for working at home be forgiven?
I would think that that would be a legitimate request.
When will we be able to apply for forgiveness if going for the 8-week?
If your 8 weeks is up and your bank is taking forgiveness applications now, you should be able to apply. Keep in mind that the bank has up to 60 days to review your decision and get back to you. And then keep in mind that after that, the SBA has up to 6 months to get back to the bank. So getting the forgiveness approved and done could take quite some time. Hopefully it will become faster and more automated than that. But if your 8 weeks is up and you plan on using the 8 weeks instead of the 24 weeks, because that makes more sense for you, there should be no reason you cannot apply now.
Is there a time limit as to when we can choose between the 8 weeks versus 24 weeks?
I don't think there's a time limit to make that choice, but there is a time limit on the forgiveness. So I think within a few weeks of your 24 weeks being expired, you have to apply or lose it. So, but when you apply, you could certainly apply for the 8 at that point if you wanted.
Does the cap on partners pertain to partners of an S Corp, or are they treated like anyone else with a $100,000 cap?
I think it pertains to people in an S Corp or any other entity.
Does the owner employee count towards the calculation of the number of employees?
It's a good question, and it's not clear to me that it does or doesn't. I don't know.
And can health premiums for the owner and the LLC be included?
No, those would be considered included in their total compensation. So I don't think so.
Are shareholders of C Corps considered owner employees?
I would think so, but you would check that with your CPA.
If you need July to hit the FTE levels, then you should wait for 24 weeks for the December 31st date.
That's likely the case. Again, you should run the scenario after the 8 weeks. And I would argue that almost all of it will be forgiven, or the majority of it will be forgiven, and you're comfortable with it after 8 weeks, you should probably just get it in and done. But if there's a big delta, it's probably likely to wait. Better to wait.
If we cannot find an employee replacement but replace the position with a contractor, will that be okay?
That would have to come out in guidance, and I'm not sure. Again, I think if you made all reasonable efforts to find that employee, then you're fine. But if you can't demonstrate that you made reasonable efforts to find them, then you're not going to be okay.
Can you clarify if payroll taxes can be used in the calculation for forgiveness?
The amount that you paid on behalf of the employee, the amount that the company paid, your part piece of it can be included, but what you paid on behalf of your employee cannot be included.
Can we wait until after December 31st to use the 8-week period option when applying for forgiveness? When are the applications due?
I need to go in. I think I recall there is a specific deadline of when they are due. I don't remember it off the top of my head. And if you want to push that in the community, we'll get back to you.
Is the average FTE count during the forgiveness period relevant, or we just need to reach February 15th head count by December 31st?
I believe if you are going to be requesting if you are in the expanded process, I believe it is relevant.
What if an employee got COVID-19 and is being paid PTO wages as per the Family First Act? Will that be forgiven?
I believe that will be forgiven. Folks, we are going to literally take 2 more questions and wrap up. I really appreciate it. If we didn't get anything to you, please go ahead and share your questions in the community site, and we'll try and answer for you.
If we finish using our funds, say in 16 weeks, can we go ahead and apply for the forgiveness, or do we need to wait for the 24 weeks? There's a lot of questions on when to apply.
Yeah, my sense is that you can do that, but some of that might still come up in guidance. But you're just picking the 24-week, but you've already sort of used 100% of your funds, and if you meet all the criteria and you're might not be have to worry about safe harbor exemptions, I think you can apply that.
Can we use the easy form if we meet FTE safe harbor when based on the application submission date rather than the June 30th or December 31st?
I don't think there are any safe harbor contingencies in the easy form. So if you're worried about safe harbor, you have to use the expanded form. And then we're going to take one more question and then we're going to wrap up.
Will there be a new form different than the one that already was provided a few weeks ago that will be needed to be completed?
Anything's possible.
Thank you very much, Ami. Guys,
I'm sorry. We're just doing our best here to answer questions that are often murky and difficult. But we wish you good luck. Strongly encourage you to check in with your CPAs, with your financial advisors, get additional information. This is not, there's a lot of vagueness, a lot of stuff here that's just not clear. And we certainly will, when there's a next big event, we will release a new Aminar series. But for now, we're going to leave you all and wish you good luck. And good luck with your businesses. Take care.